Crown of the Sunken King checks all of the boxes you'd want a piece of Dark Souls DLC to check. It looks like a natural extension of the Dark Souls 2 world, it can be fiendishly difficult, and its areas have a unique tone that only gets more pronounced. Although Crown of the Sunken King isn't as strong as Artorias of the Abyss, the DLC for the first Dark Souls, it's nonetheless a great addition to an excellent game. Unlike the cryptic process involved with accessing Artorias of the Abyss, getting to the Crown of the Sunken King is rather straightforward. After purchasing the DLC, your character is given an item that acts like a key, which can be used just after the Rotten boss fight. Shulva Sanctum City, the first of the new areas, is immediately foreboding. A large brazier sits on top of a stone circular platform with elaborately marked pillars. Deeper in, you'll pass crumbling ruins lit with a pale light produced by scattered white crystals. In the distance, you can see an enormous ziggurat with a long staircase leading to its center. From there, the following areas only get more elaborate and insidious, but they all share a common quality. Each of them feels unnatural in a way that will create a persistent sense of dread in the pit of your stomach. Very few games make uncovering a new locale as simultaneously exciting and unnerving as Dark Souls, and that remains true in the Crown of the Sunken King. Of course, it isn't just the looks of these places that'll have you on edge. Expect plenty of traps, hellish enemy placements, and white-knuckle boss fights. Numerous switches raise, lower, and rotate platforms, and can sometimes cause trouble. The layouts never get overly complex, but they're structured in such a way that you have to constantly think about the environment. Sadly, the first enemies you encounter are rather unexceptional. Undead sentries wielding maces, bows, and lances almost feel like copies of other humanoid Dark Souls enemies. Thankfully, far more interesting foes soon appear. Giant insects with grotesque bulbous rear ends can easily swarm you and emit a gas that corrodes equipment. Towering, ghostly warriors attack with dual scimitars and are frighteningly agile. While all of the monsters found in the DLC are deadly on their own, it's how they're organized that makes them particularly nasty. Even more so than Dark Souls, Crown of the Sunken King necessitates a slow, thoughtful approach for those wanting to succeed with souls intact. The most terrifying opponents are the bosses. We won't spoil the surprise, but let's just say that those looking for a challenge will certainly find it. Expect the difficulty to be on par with the most intense, non-optional fights in Dark Souls 2, if not slightly tougher. The bosses look and feel menacing in a way that only the Souls games can capture. Even with all it does right, Crown of the Sunken King isn't as well-rounded as the first game's DLC. Since it's only part 1 of a 3-part trilogy, perhaps that's to be expected, but it's still slightly disappointing. Artorias of the Abyss meaningfully fleshed out characters and events from the first game, and while this DLC does indeed have connections to the main thread of Dark Souls 2, they're not conveyed as effectively. Instead of feeling like another chapter of the story, Crown of the Sunken King largely ends up being an elaborate series of trials. And though the DLC doesn't seem excessively short, the length primarily determined by how much you struggle, it nonetheless could use 1 or 2 more areas. Yet these issues should hardly deter anyone from plunging into the depths of the Sunken King. DLC rarely reaches this level of quality, and after finishing it, it's hard to imagine the game without it. Simply put, if you've ever enjoyed the masochism that comes with being a cursed undead, this is something you won't want to miss.